Chapter 6. How can we have a stowaway? Fitz asked as Mr. Foracle shouted. Show yourself! Nothing happened for a moment. Then Della appeared behind Biana. Mom, Fitz said, rushing to hug her before he shouted at his sister. How could you keep this secret? I made her swear not to say anything, Della explained. And I only involved her because I needed to hold on to someone while we were teleporting. Why the subterfuge? Mr. Forkle asked. Please tell me you don't doubt our ability to protect your children. Quite the opposite. Della straightened her gown, looking like an ocean goddess in aquarium silk. I'm here to join the Black Swan. The words seemed to dangle, waiting for someone to reach out and grab them. Does Dad know? Fitz asked. Of course, he wanted to join, but we decided he'd be more useful if he stayed working with the council, and my talents are far better suited for covert activities. Miss Vacker, Mr. Forkle started. Della, she corrected. Your offer is very generous, Miss Della, Mr. Forkle emphasized with a slight smile, but we already have a vanisher working with us. No one can vanish the way I can, not even my son, and I'm sure you've heard how valuable Alvar has been to the council. She blinked out of sight, reappearing a second later, knee-deep in the river. Sophie wasn't sure what was crazier, how fast Della had moved, or how she hadn't caused ripples in the water. Impressive, Mr. Forkle admitted, when Della reappeared next to Biana and showed how her gown was still dry. But the question is whether letting you join would be wise. Someone as high profile as you could be an influential advocate. Della finished for him. When the council finally comes to their sentences, do you think the public will instantly trust you? The Vacker name may have a few controversies lately, but it still holds an incredible influence and power. Mr. Forkle studied Della. I see you've already removed your registry pendant. I would never put any of you at risk. Plus, I wanted to prove that I'm committed. And yet you make the commitment too lightly. Do I? Della's melodic voice hardened. I've trusted my children, and 3 others who might as well be my family, to your care. Your children's situation is different, Mr. Forkle argued. We both know we can't leave them to the council's caprice. But I could protect them on my own. Della vanished again, reappearing with a melder pressed to Mr. Forkle's head. Do not underestimate me, sir. You're not the only one with tricks up their sleeve, Mr. Forkle warned her. He tapped his right temple, and Della's arm dropped to her side. Are you a mesmer? Sophie asked, remembering Grady's similar feats. My tricks are more limited, Mr. Forkle admitted, but the mind is more powerful than the body, never forget that. I won't, Della said, vanishing the same instant Mr. Forkle collapsed. She reappeared, balanced on his belly with one of her jeweled shoes pressed against his throat. He kicked and thrashed but couldn't throw her off. I believe you've proven your point, Miss Vacker, he wheezed. She pressed her shoe down harder. I told you not to call me Della. Whoa, remind me never to get on your mom's bad side, Keith said. A valuable lesson for everyone, Della agreed, jumping to the ground and offering Mr. Forkle a hand up. Everyone believes I'm the fragile beauty hiding in my husband's shadow, but I'm far more powerful than anyone imagines. I can see that, Mr. Forkle wiped mud off his long back tunic. But I alone cannot approve your admittance into our organization. All I can promise is to bring the matter before our collective. Collective? Sophie asked. Our ruling order, Mr. Forkle clarified. 5 overseers, each with equally weighted votes. So there are 4 other leaders we've never met? Keith asked. There are many members you haven't met, but that is a good thing. The more people we have helping our cause, the more chance we have of making a difference. All the more reason to let me join, Della said. Perhaps, Mr. Forkel agreed. I'll make the suggestion when I speak with the collective, but first we have a problem. I did not plan for a stowaway, so we are short one looferator. I can tweak mine so two can share, Dex said, bending his into a Z shape. He made a few more tweaks before holding up the mouthpiece proudly. Now it works on each end. They'll have to keep their faces very close together, Mr. Forkel noted. Foster and I volunteer, Keith shouted. If anyone's going to share with Sophie, it should be me, Dex argued. Wait, why do I have to share? Sophie asked. Yeah, I nominate Dex and Keith, Fitz agreed. So do I, Mr. Forkel decided. Keith, give your looferator to Della. Wait, what just happened? Keith asked. Fitz, Biana, and Sophie cracked up. Dex fumed as Mr. Forkel ordered him and Keith to test the gadget to make sure the looferator still worked. They had to stand so close their noses practically touched. Gross, Keith whined, spitting out his mouthpiece. The air tastes like Dex's breath. Keith's breath is just as nasty, Dex snapped. But you can breathe, Mr. Fork clarified. When they nodded, he ordered everyone into the water. They gasped as the cold soaked through their clothes, except Della, who strode through totally dry. Did you know your mom could do that? Sophie asked Fitz. I did, Biana jumped in, and I will figure out how to do it. She blinked out of sight, and when she reappeared, her hair was dripping wet and stuck to her face. It's going to take some practice. I still can't believe you didn't tell me Mom was with us, Fitz grumbled. Now you know how I felt when you and Dad were busy planning all your secret visits to the Forbidden Cities. Sophie had never considered how much the search for her had affected the Vacker family. They'd all lived with secrets and broken the law for 12 years. The river grew deeper and they switched from wading to swimming. Sophie struggled to paddle while holding her backpack until Fitz reached over and carried it for her. Thanks, she mumbled, wishing she could swim so effortlessly. Within minutes, he'd reached the elephant-sized water dinosaurs. Echidons are friendly, right? She asked Biana. Of course, Biana swam to a purple-toned echidon and stroked the base of its neck. See, totally harmless. Sophie swam to a blue-toned echidon, and it made a gurgly growling sound. That's how it says hi, Fitz promised, pulling himself onto his green echidon's back. Sophie copied him while transmitting friend over and over. Her tweaked gens allowed her to communicate telepathically with animals. She couldn't tell if the echidon understood. Some creatures thought in images or emotions. Still, the echidon didn't chomp her head off, so she took that as a good sign. Dex and Keith, meanwhile, were having a very difficult time figuring out how to sit on their echidon. After several hilarious attempts, they settled for Keith facing backward with his arms wrapped around Dex, and Dex reaching around Keith to hug the echidon's neck. You guys look so cute, Fitz told them. Dude, your payback is going to be legendary, Keith warned. Looferator's in, Mr. Forker called before Dex could add his own threats. Sophie took one last deep breath and slipped the gadget into her mouth. She'd barely grabbed her echidon's neck before Mr. Forkel shouted, Dive! Down, down, down they plunged, all the way to the bottom of the river, where the water felt cold and gritty. Sophie's balefire pendant gave her just enough light to see Fitz as his echidon swam up beside her. He held out a thumbs up to ask if she was okay. She nodded, taking several shallow breaths as he pointed to where Mr. Forkel and Della had taken the lead. Sophia was glad her echidon seemed to be following on its own, since she had no idea how to steer a plesiosaur. Fitz stayed beside her, with Biana right behind, and Dex and Keith A little farther back, the echidnas swam at a steady pace until the shore dropped away, and Sophie realized they'd reached the ocean. Then each echidna stretched out its neck, tucked its flippers, and let out a piercing scream. The shrill whine was louder than whale song, richer than dolphin squeaks, and powerful enough to part the tide. The sound pitched higher than lower, swirling in the water into a funnel that blasted the echidna forward like a rocket. Whenever the vortex slowed, the creature cried again, blasting them faster and faster until Sophie was sure they'd crossed the whole ocean. And maybe she was right, because when they finally slowed, the water was tropical teal and swarming with colorful fish. They surfaced 10 minutes later, floating along a river that cut through a